Welcome to Inflection Points. Join hosts Carla Guzzetti and Tim Harrison as we explore Extreme's vision of the infinite enterprise. We see a world where people have become infinitely distributed around the globe, which means businesses must work at scale and focus increasingly on becoming consumer-centric to connect with each and every one of them. Carla, have you ever noticed there's a trend in the way tech is covered and people view it, where a technology becomes really popular and hyped, and at the peak of that hype, it starts to fade out and the real work happens, where the delivery of that technology becomes the key?
Yes, I have noticed that. Yes. I feel like we're always in this hype cycle with tech, and then we just are like, oh yeah, that's the thing. And then we want to move on, or it doesn't meet our expectations of the hype. Right.
Right.
So, I think a victim of this is actually the topic that we're talking about today, drones. Right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Everybody expected drones were going to be the thing that was going, particularly in the pandemic, was going to drop off our groceries at the front door. I'm going to get my, hand-picked outfit delivered to me by a drone. And it hasn't happened yet. And so everybody kind of feels like, oh, well, those expectations didn't happen because that's what the media told me it was going to be. And now it's, drones are here to take pictures of real estate and, do some B-roll for Hollywood movies or something like that, and
right.
But no.
Instead, there's actual real work being done by drones. Like, it's actually, the technology has reached a point where it's saving lives. Specifically, there was a lung delivered for a lung transplant in Toronto just recently, delivered via drone. Drones are being used by first responders to, look for people, to make sure that houses are safe for firefighters to go in, that kind of thing. So there's real work happening, and drones are actually being used to make a difference.
Well, and the funny thing, which nobody talks about in the media and the hype cycle, is that what really stops drones from being able to do what the hype is about is the people, right? We got to figure out, how does society make it acceptable for drones to be in and out of our houses all day and all of that? It's not that the tech can't do it, right? The tech can do it. We need to figure out, how are we going to feel comfortable with it, right? And that can slow it down. But there's so much more to think about this. And it is very infinite enterprise-like, right? Because drones help with massive distribution, and
absolutely,
they have to be very customer centric, because part of what we have to work through, right, is to think about, how is it going to work for the individual? How does it work for society? So we've got to work through that. And then, of course, scale. I mean, drones can do all sorts of applications for either an individual or an entire country. There's a lot that we can do.
As a tool, they are a fantastic tool in the tool belt to be able to deliver, consumer-centric results, if you will. And as consumers and people get more comfortable with it, we'll find new ways to be able to leverage drones as tools.
Yeah. And I am really interested to see what's going to happen, because I frankly think that there are so many more applications for drones than what we're currently seeing. And I know that I am going to ask our guest, Philip Reece, the CEO of Indro Robotics, which is a drone and robotics firm that's expanding rapidly in Victoria, British Columbia, up in Canada. I know he's going to have the answers for me. I'm going to ask him everything. And I really want to know exactly when my outfit is going to be delivered by a drone. I need to know this.
Well, he's also got a great new name for drones that he hopes will catch on. So look for that. And this is going to be really exciting, because, my experience with drones are just the things you get at the store, and I crash into my house. So I'm hoping to find out so much more about this.
I'm sure there are some new applications.
I'm sure. Let's go talk to Philip.
Philip, I understand that you used to own your own airline, and then you saw a need for drones. Can you tell us more about that? Walk us through that story, because that sounds fascinating. And also, wow, you owned your own airline and you said, I think I need to get into drones. Unpack your thinking there. Tell us the story.
Sure. Yeah, well, it's always exciting being a pilot, of course, but owning the airline was something very different. Mm-hmm. So we were flying about 30,000 passengers in and out of Vancouver to the Gulf Islands, as well as we did quite a lot of geological surveys. So we'd fly the Havilland Beavers, which is sort of like the pickup of the sky. great machines. They just keep on trucking. And they've got this little bay underneath where you open it up and you put all sorts of camera arrangements and you put them in there, set them up, and off you go and map big mine sites. We had quite a few clients who we do this with, and it was great revenue. They'd book the planes out for a day to put all this setup up, and then they'd fly way up north for 2 or 3 days, and they'd come back and pay us for a day to disassemble it all. Often they'd get it wrong, and they'd have to go back up and do it again, which we were really, really disappointed about. But so they'd go up. So one day we were booking these services up in advance, and I called the guy up and said, are you ready to do your survey this year? And he said, no, we're not going to do it this year. We're going to use drones. And I thought, drones? You're going to use drones to do that? Is that possible? He's like, yep, we're going to use drones. This company here we've been in touch with, and we're going to use drones. So I'm like, okay. So I started doing the research and started to dig right into it and got really excited about what drones could do. And that was really the start of the journey of moving things from just thinking as an airline to drones. There is a strange caveat to the end of that little story, though, is 12 months later, once I already had my drone program up and running, I rang the guy back up who we used to do the airline survey for. And I said to him, we can do your survey now. We've got drones. He's like, wasn't drones. It was satellites. Satellites I was going to use, not drones.
Satellites, drones, small difference.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What's 100 kilometers between friends, right?
I'd already had the drone bug by then, so it was too late.
Now, when you're talking about drones, I'm assuming you're not talking about the $1,000 thing that you get off of Amazon. There must be something more to it than what I, as a casual observer, might see. When you're talking about drones, what is the scale of this? Those $1,000 drones that you can buy from Best Buy or Amazon or whatever are awesome. There's amazing technology packed into those. And we deal with quite a lot of first responders where basically we supply them with the bigger and heavier drones that we've got. But we'll also give them these tiny little $1,000 drones because they're cheap, they're almost disposable, they can put them in their backpack. And it's a little bit like that old adage, the best camera that is the camera you've got. So if they can throw up this $1,000 drone just to see over the hedge or whatever when they're trying to find something, it's great. But you're right, our drones are very different to those. So our flagship drone is called the Wayfinder, 25 kilograms, so considerably heavier. Those ones you're talking about are probably about 1 kilogram. So we're 55 pounds, 25 kilograms. We carry all sorts of cool technology on there. They've all got an onboard computer. They're not controlled by a handset like you would normally control them. They're linked in 3 different ways. One, RF, which is the same as the controller. Another by cellular, which is how we do most of our flights because they're such long distance. And we've also got satellite overlink to them as well. So as soon as you separate them from that RF sort of tether, you can control them from anywhere in the world. We've actually got quite a large command center in Ottawa where it's the whole NASA thing. We've got big screens and lots of people at rows, and they can log into any one of our drones and take it off and fly it around, take over the camera, take over the settings, give it a mission, just upload it. And it really makes things completely different to how they've been in the past. So we've got 2 programs on we like working with first responders. It's a great program working with first responders. They do amazing things with our technology. But often, as you can imagine, they're in high stress situations. They've got lots going on. So we instigate what we call the co-pilot. So they take the drone out of the box and we've got a little traffic light set up and they press the red button. And in our control room, the traffic light lights up. One of our guys puts on his headset, logs in. He presses the amber button. The guy in the field says, okay, I'm connected, amber, green, and then we press green. And then he can take off the drone and he flies his mission and he goes out and he's looking for somebody lost in the woods or whatever. And he flies around. We can see it all on our screen. We're watching at the same time he is. And then he might say something to us like, okay, can you take over the camera because I'm going to fly in the drone here. We'll log in, we'll take over his camera and we can move it around and we can send all of that data to his command center or to other searchers in the field, other rescuers. And then often what will happen is he says, okay, we found the missing kid or whatever, and it's zoned in here. I'm going to hover the drone here. Can you take over? I'm going to inform my commander that we found it and start the search party going out. And we literally take over. So we're co-pilot thousands of miles away from where the mission is happening. And it just frees him up. So it really dials down his stress level, knowing he's got, a guardian angel sitting on his shoulder, ready to take over.
That's incredible. And it sounds like that is an incredibly detailed and important use case, particularly for first responders. But how have you seen the adoption of drones potentially increase as a result of the pandemic? And where are some of the new use cases that are popping up? And do you think that's being driven by people or is it being driven by the industry?
It's an excellent question. We've seen so many changes with COVID, as we all have. I think one of the biggest ones we've found is simply the adoption of Zoom calls and things like that. People now, they get it. It works. Okay, great. So we're doing inspections now where we've got an engineer in the office or at home, and he's inspecting hydro lines, power lines, for example. So we'll have a technician, sort of just the usual technician level, not a senior engineer, and he goes out and he pops up the drone in the field and he flies it, or we fly it from the command center. And the engineer can just log in. He's like, okay, he's watching the power line. He's zipping in to see, okay, I want to see these screws are out of place or whatever. And then he doesn't have to drive 3 hours to this power line. And then when he's finished that, he logs off that one and he logs into a different technician who's also in the field somewhere else. So he can have an 8-hour day now and inspect hundreds of miles of hydro line without going and driving around. And I think COVID, it's not the pandemic and people staying at home that really sort of got that home. It's just the fact that people have got proper setups and proper screens and proper activity and the way to go in. So that's one big change that we've seen, sort of that social acceptance. But we've also launched other products as well. I mean, we're very excited about our new Rolly product. That's ROLL-E. And it's a ground robot that rolls around. And it does everything from delivering prescriptions within a building. We've actually got it in a nursing home, and it trundles around, goes into the elevator, comes back out. And it's sort of removing the people contact from it. There's a drone there. Well, it's a ground robot, and it can do all of these things. It can do delivery. We've got them moving outside now as well at UBC, which is University of British Columbia. We're setting up a program with a pharmacy who's actually on the high street. You go in and you get your the thing stuck up your nose or whatever they're doing currently. They put it in the box, and the box locks itself. It's a special lock. And then it trundles off to the lab, which is 5 kilometers away, and hands over all these samples. Now, for the first, dozen times we did this, people would photograph it and follow it along the street and, pose with it. But it's amazing now. We log in and we watch it. People don't pay any attention to it at all. So we've actually got to make it. It hums a little tune as it goes along the street because people ignore it otherwise. So it really is quite cool to see how quickly we all adapt to that kind of thing.
That's really fascinating. I mean, when we talk about robotics, I guess we get very sci-fi and start thinking of things like Star Wars and, Star Trek. I'm more on the Trek side than Star Wars, but hey, when you're talking about robotics, is this R2-D2, C-3PO? Like where is that robotics element currently, and how do people react to it? Yeah. Well, obviously, I mean, you said that people are ignoring it now, which is maybe uncomfortable.
Well, it's sort of what we want them to do. It's definitely more an R2-D2 than a C-3PO. It's sort of the more boring we can make it, kind of the better. It's a box on wheels. It's split into one side heats, the other side cools. It's got cameras all around it. And initially what we did is we made these cameras into little eyes, and, we sort of made it cute because that's kind of what you think you've got to do with a robot. But we found through deploying it, it's much easier if you don't. People just forget about a box on wheels. They don't humanize it. It's a tool all of a sudden. It's not something to interact with, which really is kind of what you want. So I'm afraid we're taking the fun things out of robots. It's no longer quite as exciting.
Is it that you want to make it less interesting or less engaging because you want people to focus on the job to be done by it?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, we want it to be mundane, to just be a tool, to just trundle along and do its thing. And yeah.
And how do you see those robots interacting with drones? Is this an ecosystem that you're building?
It is very much so. We've got the base at Ottawa is actually based at a big test center, and we've got a mobile Sprinter van, Mercedes Sprinter van that we've turned into really our show on wheels kind of thing. It's got screens inside and pilot stations. It's got a big screen on the outside. But the neat things are we can send a drone up, so it takes off from the roof and flies around and does whatever it does. It could do a hydro line inspection. It could be searching for those missing people. It could be doing a smart farm. So it flies over the farm. It's looking at all the crops. It's got a NDR camera on that does special different levels of light, so it can detect pests or stresses in the plant. And then it brings back this information in the van. It's processing it all. And we've now got it so that it can dispatch a robot. So we've got a different size robot to the Rolly This one's the Sentinel. It looks a little bit like a wheelbarrow. It's got tracked like a tank tires, but it's sort of the size of a wheelbarrow. You imagine it like that. And we actually make it look a little bit like a wheelbarrow. Again, to Carla's point, to make it a little bit mundane and sort of, it's just a tool. And it'll go out to exactly this plant that's been found by the drone and say, okay, that plant needs treatment. It'll go over to it, squirts it with its pesticide, just gets that single plant. So we're not covering the whole farms. We're reducing the use of pesticide. We're getting it targeted, squirts that one plant, trundles back off, goes up the tracks and goes into its little doghouse and recharges its batteries, ready for the next time. So it's very much that Internet of Things, I think, it's a little overused, but, drones finding something, ground robot going and activating it. And then the beauty is it all uploads it all, and the farmer just has it on his dashboard. He can be like, okay, what happened yesterday? Oh, great. And he can go back and back and back and see sort of what we did and often what we missed. We're still very much in the learning stages. We recently discovered there's a stress that attaches to some fruit trees called fire blight, and it turns the top of the leaves red, stops the leaves producing sugar, damages the fruit. But by going back through flying this mission quite often, we found normally when it gets treated is actually 3 weeks into the infestation. So we can detect things much earlier, treat them much earlier, save the plant.
Amazing.
Wow.
It seems like there are so many clear use cases for drones and also, is it ground robots?
Ground robots, yeah.
Ground robots. There's so many obvious use cases because it sounds like it makes doing a number of jobs that take a very long time for a human to do. It makes everything so much more efficient. But where do you see the demand really in growth in using drones and also for ground robots? What are the verticals in your mind that you see are going to continue to grow and want to adopt new use cases for drones and ground robots?
Oh dear. Yeah, I can see I'm getting a theme here. I'm going for the boring again. So, yeah. To answer your question, the reason we call them ground robots is that we're trying to build up the term flying robots because that sounds so much cooler than drones, doesn't it? Flying robots. Everybody wants a flying robot.
And less intimidating too.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, but hey.
Yeah.
So we really see this kind of thing kicking off as smart infrastructure inspection. So that covers all sorts of things. Yes, a farm, sure, but you imagine your substation. You've got a substation, it's producing electricity, and the inspector from the company's got to go along and check it every so often and make sure it's all doing its thing. But what often happens is you have an outage, something goes wrong, a tree falls in the yard, and now you've got to send that inspector to go and have a look because all you know is it's not working. But the very fact that a tree fell probably means it's had terrible weather, we've had flooding or a tree down somewhere else, so it takes them forever to get there and doesn't get to the end result. Now, what we would do is we'd put our ground robot there in its little doghouse, literally looks like a dog kennel. And, the engineer can log in and he might say, okay, I want to inspect this plant because something's going on. But the more exciting bit is at 6 a.m. every morning, it's going to wake up all on its own and do a little walk around or trundle around and capture all the information. It's got a little wand with a camera on, so it captures all the other bits, not just on the ground. So when the engineer comes in, he's got a survey of what happened, what the site looked like at 6 o'clock. Similarly, on wind turbines, this is kind of a cool one that we really pushed forward ourselves. We built it all from scratch. So shameless promotion here. Big wind turbines, they're obviously producing lots of electricity. They need inspecting quite a lot because the spinny thing delaminates. That's a technical term.
The spinny thing.
The spinny thing delaminates.
Trademark name.
So what we've done is we've actually built quite a small drone, the similar size to the ones that Tim was talking about where, you buy from Best Buy. This one's about that size, just a whole lot smarter. And it lives on the side of just one wind turbine. So one wind turbine, one drone lives on the side there, and it's getting information from the wind turbine all the time. And it'll say, I'm not producing my full amount of power because I'm spinning slow, or there's been a big storm in, something needs inspecting. And this little robot stuck on the side is smart enough to be able to check in the weather. It knows there's a storm. Now, if there's hail, first thing it does, waits for the hail warning to pass. Now it pops up and it just flies around just that wind turbine, inspects all of the spinny things and the control box on top, and then gives the report back to the engineers. Hail impacted here, it needs assistance. So these drones live on each one of these wind turbines. And now you've got an engineer in a command center and he can be like, okay, what's tower number 30 doing? Okay, the drone flew there this morning, tower number 31. Nope, nothing there. I'm going to send the drone out. And it's instant. The drone will take off, fly around. You'll have the visual right there. Unfortunately, we haven't got to the stage yet where the drone can then do something about it, but it can report back straight away. And then he knows he can dispatch a team to just the areas that he needs to. And these drones are getting smarter and smarter every day and getting cheaper and cheaper, which is kind of cool. It's, we're following that technology, half the price and double the speed.
It sounds like you're solving for massive scale at this point, right? I've flown over West Texas and seen all the wind farms down there, and it's incredible the size of these. So having these drones and ground robots available to go out and solve for scale problems like that, it sounds like this is an incredible opportunity to be able to leverage that in places where people don't normally live, like far north, for example, or high in the mountains.
Yeah, definitely. So, and a lot of people are concerned about, drones flying around for privacy or for noise, or that they might fall out of the air onto you or fly away in the air and interfere with, other air traffic. The beauty of making them small and attaching them to just one wind turbine is this drone, even if it completely malfunctioned and flew away, 60 meters away before it would run out of battery, that's not its job. It won't fly far away. Mm-hmm. And if it did fall out of the air, firstly, wind turbine, there's going to be nobody there, but it weighs about 300 grams. So it's not like it's, you might get a shock, but that would be about it. So, yeah.
So you mentioned, interrupting air traffic or something of that nature. It sounds like there's probably a lot of regulation around this, or, obviously you come from the airline industry, you're familiar with regulations, but I know Transport Canada has a training course that you have to take if your drone is larger than X size, what have you. To be able to do inspections on hydro lines or something of that nature, there must be a lot of regulation involved.
There is, and there always has been. So when we started Indro Robotics 8 years ago, I purposely started it out to be an aviation company that flies drones. So we really approached Transport Canada and the FAA with that sort of mindset. We're going to operate this fully as if it's an airline. We're going to take all of the safety into consideration. All the pilots are going to have full qualifications. They're all going to be timed out, so they'll take their breaks. They've got to have a medical. So we really brought everything from aviation that we'd learned that works, because it's been working for the last 100 years, and we brought it into drones. Back then, there was only 2 people at Transport Canada who were involved with drones. So it was really great. I think they appreciated what we were doing. They guided us in some ways, and we gave them so much feedback. They brought us on at one stage as a consultant, a technical advisor to Transport Canada. Oh, wow. So we were giving them information. I now sit on the Canadac rulemaking committee appointed by Transport Canada. So I think it's a great way for the regulators really to embrace technology. They bring in experts from the field and have an open dialogue. We don't always get what we want. Transport Canada have got their heavy, it's got to be safe and you've got to be able to demonstrate it. And we like that. We like it's got to be safe. But there's a difference in some of it because a lot of the Transport Canada and FAA regulators came from standard aviation. So they think 5,000 hours proves that it's safe. Mm-hmm. And when you're a drone and you're like, well, a drone usually flies for somewhere between 3 and 20 minutes. It's going to take us a long, long time to get to that. Yeah. So we convinced them to try and make it on trips rather than on flight hours.
Oh, interesting.
So look into the crystal ball for me for just a minute, because I am dying to know, when am I going to have a drone or a ground robot delivering my groceries or bringing me, the boots that I just ordered or something like that? How far away are we from seeing most of our street traffic and our foot traffic potentially being ground robots or drones that are flying low in and out of neighborhoods? How far away is that? Still crazy, or is it going to happen fairly soon?
There's a good news and a bad news story to that. One short term and one a little longer term. It's not crazy because it is going to happen. We've all seen the development of it. I'll start with the good bit. Ground robots, they're almost here. So we've got it now, where you go onto your favorite market and you book your things online because it's COVID and nobody wants to go out anymore. So we book it all online. And we've actually got with Loblaws, the big chain here in Canada, where we're starting to set up with them the ground robot in the store, and it gets the information straight away. You put your order in, it goes straight into the ground robot. And this is still in trials at the moment, so it's still early days, but it actually knows where everything is in the supermarket already, because there's huge inventory systems in that supermarket. They monitor all that information. So it's not producing it new, but you say in there you want, 4 apples, it knows where the apples are. So it takes its helper along with it, or its helper takes it, and they both trundle off to the Apple section. It's got a basket on top, and they just fill it in. There's a little screen that says, Carla ordered this, 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 and this, and they put it all in, and there you go. That's your order in a basket, puts it down, the operator closes the lid, and then off it goes. And currently, you've got to live within about 5 to 7 kilometers of the store. Otherwise, it takes too long to get there because we're very limited by speed, But that could happen right now. And you will see that in some cities within, I'm going to make a guess, 2 years. So that's the good news. Now you want to know when you're going to get your boots delivered from Amazon by a drone. Now
Exactly.
That's going to be,
When is the air robot coming by so that I can try on all my clothes?
See, air robot. We're starting to make it'll stick. Yeah,
you've got its converts here.
It's a little longer for 2 reasons. Sure, we've got a drone that could fly the distance. Yes, we've already proved it can carry the weight. They're easy enough to load. I mean, let's face it, we've been watching the Amazon advert for like 6 years now since they originally put out their little proof of concept. That's not the hard bit. Would you believe the hard bit is at your house? So you don't really want this thing dropping your new boots in your front yard. Next door's dog's going to chase it. Porch pirates are going to run by and upgrade their fashion attire. It's going to rain. So it's the infrastructure at your house, really, that is the problem. What we're looking at there, we're trying to address that now. We're actually working with a company in the UK that turns skylights in your house into drone ports. So the drone flies along. Yeah, it's already there. It's pointing at the roof. It's an opening. The drone comes along. They do a little handshake between each other. It opens up the skylight. Drone drops its little cargo in. Skylight closes and flies off to somewhere else. So infrastructure solving there. We've got another one that we're highlighting with Canada Post, where it's a box, like a cluster box where you go to get your mail. So this is a cluster box like that. The drone flies to there. It lands on top, so it's quite high, so it's out of the way of neighbor's dog and porch pirates. Drops down the cargo, and it goes into one of 6 bays. And then your phone pings to say, Carla, your boots are here. So, you go along, pick them up from there, and it's in your neighborhood. It's not like you've got to go to the store. You've still got to leave the house, but, you've got to wear those boots somewhere. So it's probably a good reason to leave the house.
So it sounds like there's a cross between leveraging existing infrastructure and creating new infrastructure to be able to solve some of these problems.
It is. That's the way to go. Yeah. And I think we're doing the same with Airspace as well. So to get it from the store to your house, we know we've got the technology in the drone itself. We've just discussed the technology at the landings pad, but now we need UTM, so unmanned traffic management or universal traffic management, so we can put the drone in airspace with other aircraft, with helicopters, with airplanes, but also with other drones. And there's 2 schools of thought here. One is designate a certain piece of airspace, which is just for drones. So only drones in that airspace, don't worry about airplanes. It's good in theory. The problem is if you've got a drone that can fly from the Amazon factory to Carla's house, it's probably going to be able to fly 20 kilometers. Now, if it breaks, malfunctions, flies away, that could fly a long way. And the rule of thumb is if it can fly 20 kilometers north, south, east, or west, it's going to go straight up. So then it gets into bad airspace. So I'm not a real believer in segregated airspace. I think we need to have drones smart enough that they can mix in complex airspace with other aircraft. So that's a challenge we haven't got to yet. There's a lot of UTM devices coming up. You need to be able to detect and avoid. Drones need to be able to assess where aircraft are and where they're heading, and then give way. So, the drones have to give way to an airplane. We're never going to want an airplane giving away to a drone.
That is fair.
Yeah. I think the airplane's going to win in general unless it goes into an engine. But yeah, I am enlightened because prior to our conversation, my thoughts on drones were, as you say, the Best Buy kind of thing. And the first time I used the one that I bought, I crashed it into my son's playhouse, and that was the last time I used it. So I'm glad there are people like you out there that are building this in a much more effective and safe and useful way. So thank you so much for the time. We really appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing drones delivering boots to Carla's place sometime in the near future.
Me too.
Me too. We'll be flying them from our command center right to your house.
Oh, yeah. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Philip.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks, Carla.
Carla, that was fascinating. Philip is talking about flying drones from Ottawa in Canada, obviously, and in British Columbia. These are thousands of kilometers apart. Like, this is pretty distributed, don't you think? And quite at scale.
So yes, that's definitely distributed and at scale. And also, they are not drones. They are flying robots.
Flying robots.
You heard it here first.
You did.
Which is renamed because it has to be customer centric. I thought it was also really interesting the way that you realize they don't want to make the ground robots adorable because it draws too much attention to them. That is the complete opposite of what you think, but that is what being customer centric is all about. So, in my book, what his business is doing is very much aligned to the 3 tenets of the infinite enterprise and very much aligned with what we're working here on and what our North Star is, right? So it is the technology that is distributed, it's customer centric, it works at scale, bam, approved.
It gets the approved stamp. I love it.
Yes.
What was fascinating to me from a consumer centricity standpoint was that, Philip was running an airline and discovered that, his customers were starting to use drones. So he went into the drone business only to discover that, the hype was over and it was now time to actually deliver. And he's actually delivering, which is wonderful. I think that's such a great thing to hear. If you compare that with the networking industry is really about the tools that support all the things that people are hyped up about, right? So I think that the idea of going past that hype and going into the functionality and truly delivering on the value of that technology is a great story to tell.
I mean, networking has to support both vision and also functionality at all times. Yep. And it really has to be able to do the things when people have forgotten the media cycle around whatever the technology is and people are actually seeing it through. That's what we're there for. That's what it's all about.
Yep, that allows the infinite enterprise to address all different types of applications, which I think is wonderful.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it was a fantastic conversation with Philippa, and I'm really looking forward to seeing Rolly on the streets sometime soon.
That's right. Me too. Yeah, I know that I may be living far enough outside of the city that I need drones to deliver to me, but I look forward to having that happen as well. And the idea that we can get what we want and we can get what we need delivered no matter where we are. So at scale, consumer-centric, infinitely distributed.
Totally. Approved. I'm putting in my skylight right now.
Well, that's great. I look forward to hearing all about your shoe deliveries.
Oh, I'll let you know. Well, great. I really enjoyed the conversation, and, we're going to talk about more next time.
I'll see you on the next podcast. Join us for our next episode of Inflection Points, when we'll be talking about augmented reality in retail. Can AR applications challenge the retail supremacy of Amazon? Episodes drop every other Wednesday. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.